Hello, welcome to my Minecraft Redstone video, and today we will be covering the Minecraft Redstone Signal Transfer. So, first we actually need to establish that a Redstone Signal Transfer is basically just turning on something from your position to activate something that's far away. And normally we could just do this with lever, redstone dust, and a piston. Very simple, right? Well, what if you want to go further? Well, the only way to do it normally is to use a repeater, but the repeater has a delay, which is not very good. So, if I flick this lever right here, you see that it's actually take a bit of time for the piston to activate, which is not really what we want, right? We want to activate it instantly, because that's just better. Well, good for you if you clicked into this video and still watching. There is actually a way to instantly activate Redstone Signal. Well, let's first start with the horizontal way. So for a flat ground, you can actually create a contraption that looks like this, and it will instantly activate a Redstone Signal. Let me demonstrate. When I flick this lever, you can see it instantly powers this piston that goes all the way to the other side and loops all the way back here. This is double the length of the one with repeater that I just got. But this one is actually faster than the repeater way. Well, why does this work? Well, let me show you. If I freeze the tick and activate it and come over here, you'll actually see that the redstone signal will go into this block, which then powers the piston, which then will move the redstone block, temporarily unpowering this block here, and also at the same time power the redstone dust to keep repeating this process. And if I go slash take step 2, and the piston is already powering, and you can see that because this block is being retracted since the redstone was removed for a split second, the piston is retracting again. And if we keep going, the redstone block will power the piston again and re-enter the state of being powered. So why does this work? Well, this is actually very similar to a zero tick smart piston. A zero tick smart piston is essentially just you placing a block and it will instantly push the block outwards in a very high speed. And why this works is because it updates two pistons at the same time, which kind of creates a block update or status update to the piston that pushes the blocks, which is why it mixes so quickly. So by making a contraption like this, you can instantly send redstone signal horizontally through any type of distances. So you think this is the end of video? No, not yet. We still got quite a bit to go. Well, time to mention the vertical ways of transferring redstone signals. The first one I got here is a very simple staircase signal just casually going up. Well, when I step on this pressure plate, the piston will instantly extend. And this is because there is no repeaters in this whole staircase, so the redstone signal just transfers immediately. But if you may recall that I've mentioned before, redstone signal has a limit of 15 blocks. And that means that if I go one block higher and try to do the same, the piston will not activate. Well, why is that? Let me show you. If I now just keep the redstone signal on and I come up here, you can see that the redstone signal actually ran out right here, which is why the redstone couldn't go all the way up here. So this vertically way of transporting redstone signal is instant, is good, but it has a limit of 15 blocks. Well, up to going to our next one, we got the alternate redstone torch. So how redstone torches work is that when you power the block right below it, it will turn off. So using this alternating pattern, we can alternate all the way to the top and activate the piston. Well, this theoretically has no limits to how far you can go, but there is a bit of delay when it's going up, because between the interval of each redstone torch, they have a slightly bit of delay, which causes it to be slow. So this could be useful if you're trying to send signals for a long distance and don't really mind about how long it takes. And next one, we got the slime block tower, which then pushes the redstone block and powers this piston and keeps repeating itself. So when I power this piston, you can see that it actually takes a bit of time for the redstone signal to travel. But when I turn it off, it's basically instant activation. Well, why is that? So if follow me up here and look at this. I'll actually need to power this first. And you can see that the redstone block is directly in contact with the piston. But if I freeze the tick right now, and now unpower it, and I go slash tick step, the moment it turns off, the piston already starts retracting because the redstone block has already left the contact zone. So it's much quicker. You can see that the chain reaction basically happens instantly. But when I activate it, it'll be a different story. Because when I turn the piston on and I go step, tick, step, the piston will not activate until the redstone block directly contacts into it, which takes 2 ticks, which then will start the piston pushing up, which takes another 2 ticks, and takes another 2 ticks, which is why it is actually different for every single time that you activate the piston, because every time you activate it, it will have a different speed. So when you turn it on, it will take longer, but when you turn it off, it will be much quicker, which may cause some issue if you're building redstone builds that requires very precise signal timing. Alright, on to the next one. We have the tree way of powering it, and I actually discovered this recently. I actually didn't know this. Is that when you have a log and leaves, and by placing a log under a leaf, it actually creates a status update, because it actually updates it from being a tree to being not a tree. So if I put an observer right here to observe the leaf, you can actually see that updates every time I remove or place a log. And you can actually see this little number. That just means how much signal it does. And yeah, it is pretty weird. And the maximum distance it can go is actually 6 leaf blocks, which is, you can see from here. So when I step on this pressure plate, it will power the piston, pushes the lock, and turns this into a tree. And at the top of the server, will observe it and push the lock and keeps going up. And as you can see, it takes a while for the signal to go up. It's much longer than all the previous one that I mentioned, and this is because by placing observers on this first layer, you can very easily see that the redstone signal actually travels by kind of going up like a wave kind of signal, which is why it takes so long for the signal to go all the way up there. So if you want to like save up some slime and you're like, I don't want to spend them, you can just grab some leaves, grab a wood and a few piston and observers, and you basically have yourself a theoretically infinity long vertical redstone signal transfer. So for all the 4 designs that I've mentioned, they actually have a opposite version that goes downwards. So the first one I got here is the redstone staircase, and from it being the same as the other one, the only limit is to how far the redstone signals could reach. So if I right now grab a lever, which I don't have one. Oh yep. And when I power this, you see that down here, the signal is 1. And if I break this block and change it into redstone dust, it will no longer power this piston. So the only limit to using the staircase method is the length that it could travel, which is 15 blocks vertically. And onto the next one is quite an interesting version of the redstone torch tower. So what this does is essentially this redstone torch is powering these 2 redstone dust, which then actually powers this redstone torch because they are on the block. So you might have thought that the redstone torch will only activate when it's on the top, right? No, it's actually on the block that it is on. So if I power this block, because the redstone torch is placed onto this white concrete directly, it will also turn it off. And by using this trick, we can repeat this infinite amounts of times in theory, and we'll create quite a staircase, which then torch powers the dust, which turns off the torch, and then not powers the dust, which means the torch will be on and powers these 2 dusts and goes all the way down here. And all we need to do is to power this dust, which is directly on top of the redstone torch that the block that the redstone torch is on, which will completely flip the whole system. Which means, yep, the piston will activate. And the downside of this is purely the time it takes to go downwards. It's basically same as the redstone torch tower, but just going downwards with a bit of extra redstone dust. To be honest, these redstone dusts are not really necessary. I just placed them there because I kind of felt like it. But yes, this is theoretically like the most like beginner friendly way to send a redstone signal downwards if you're like starting some new farms and just got into redstone. Okay, and next up we got the slime block tower. It's basically the same thing, but it just goes up down instead. So the piston everything down, push down the redstone block, which then powers the rail and can actually send the redstone signal through the rail into the piston. And I'll explain later why I need to use a rail. So as you can see here, just power it on, the piston activates, and when I turn it off, it'll be much quicker. So same reason as the other side is because the redstone block will deactivate whatever's here immediately when it's pulled back, which means the chain reaction takes much less time. And the reason I need to use a rail instead of just directly powering the piston with the redstone block is because Minecraft Redstone Signal Transfer has this weird thing of, yeah, it just kind of powers like through a block, kind of weird. I actually haven't done much research on this, but it kind of just does this goofy thing with like redstone blocks and pistons, which is why I needed the rail in the middle to act as kind of like a quarantine for the piston so that it wouldn't just stay on. So yeah, this one is just the redstone torch tower but much quicker. And then we got the tree. So it's the same principle basically, but just going downwards vertically. So you can see here it takes quite a while for the signal to go down. Yeah. So it's the same principle. Observe that it becomes a tree, downwards tree somehow, and pushes the lock and just goes all the way down. All of the redstone methods that I previously mentioned in the vertical zones are the types that kind of can go like both ways, like both upwards and downwards, but there are some special cases. Let's start with going upwards. So the first one we got here is actually a very special property that a redstone dust signal could actually travel through a transparent or incomplete block, such as glass. So you can see here that when I step on this piston, it will instantly activate the piston because there's no repeater in the middle and it just kind of goes up. You don't need to build like a whole staircase around the thing just to power it. No. You can just use transparent blocks or slabs. So basically, if you have redstone signal and you got a transparent block, the signal just kind of goes through. And the reason it couldn't go back downwards is because a redstone signal actually cannot travel downwards through a incomplete block. It's like how you can't like jump off like a very tall place without like going down through the stairs, because that's like the safer way. So yeah, just think of it like that, which is why it could not go downwards. And as I demonstrated here, you can see that the redstone signal just doesn't go down. And yeah, keep in mind you can actually replace glass with slabs. So if I just replace these two real quick, you see that it still works perfectly just like it did. So yeah, you don't have to use glass. And then the other way is the water column effect. and this will only work in the overworld or the end because you can't have water in the nether. And how it works is that observers can actually also update soul send a column, like from bubbled to non-bubble, which is how this is basically just a bucket, and when I power it, we take the water out, which makes the piston get powered, as you can see here. And when I do it again, it'll put the water back in and turn it into a bubble column. So you can see that this is not exactly instant, but it's still quite fast and a very fun way to transport signal upwards. And the only limit of this device is just that you can't use it in the nether, but I guess most farms you will probably be in the overworld, I guess. Now to the most popular way of sending a redstone signal downwards is actually using stone walls. You see, when I have a block here, you can see that the wall just kind of just turns into this different form of like a, it just kind of just pokes out. So an observer can actually observe this change. If I can find my observer in my inventory, yep. If I put an observer here and a piston here, you can see that the change can be detected. And if we put the observer down here, and as you can see I powered the redstone and powered the piston, I can actually kind of do like a instant redstone signal updates. And when I say instant, it's not necessarily instant because the observer kind of takes 2 ticks to detect it, but it's very close to instant, and it's probably the fastest way they can do it. And you're probably wondering, oh, why can't I do it upwards? Well, let me demonstrate. You see, when I put a block here, which is what I was doing the whole time, the redstone signal does go down because the stone wall changes form. All the stone wall below the block that I place updates, but the ones above just doesn't. It keeps the same form. And if I use the observer piston strat, you can see it does not detect the change at all, which is very unfortunate and why we couldn't make a instant upward signal with stone walls. So it is quite a shame that you couldn't do it, but I believe the Redstone community do have some other ways to send the signal downwards or upwards or whatever instantly. So this is the end of the video, and if you think any of this was useful or you are interested in more contents like these, leave a comment, maybe like the video, so let me know, and thank you.